Hello again from Fired Up. I'm your host for the show, Bob Irwin, broadcasting from Rigel Studios here in Las Vegas, Nevada. This show is about guns, related politics, and self-defense issues. Fired Up is on my website, Fired Up with Bob Irwin, as well as the American Guns and Glory Network, YouTube as a separate show, and numerous other media. If your local internet provider does not carry Fired Up, simply ask them to do that. We will certainly help them. A new show is posted every Thursday around 5 p.m. Pacific time. Our audio feed is rebroadcast for radio listeners on Saturdays at noon on the Nevada Talk Network. You can check out KELY1230.com for a station in your part of Nevada. If you have questions or comments, you can send an email to bob@firedupmail.com. It's somewhere on the bottom of your screen, I hope. Or leave a message on my office recorder, which is 702-257-1060. Again, that's 702-257-1060. If you don't leave contact information, I cannot call you back. There are several hundred defensive uses of firearms each week in the United States. Rarely, truthfully, are fully covered by mainstream media. I always select a few for each show for my listeners' education. Most are good shooting, some are questionable, some are just plain wrong, but all are educational for those of you that keep a defensive firearm in your home or carry one for self-defense in your vehicle or on the street. Individual incidents generally are adjudicated under local law, so the advice given here may not apply in the area where you live. Advice from a local gun-savvy defense attorney is always recommended. Stories are often paraphrased for clarity by me translating them from police jargon, lawyer speak, or regional accents into more standard American English. Incidents are as reported, but the names of the individuals involved are deleted. I do usually identify the cops, the lawyers, and the media inside stories, but not the participants. This first story, all that being said, comes to us from 12 News WBNG and the New York State Police reports on July 29 of 2020, this year, in Enfield, New York. Troopers responded to a home on Rumsey Hill Road just after 7 in the morning on Saturday. The police report says 2 subjects broke into the house. The homeowner told them to leave, but they refused. That's when he shot at them, apparently hitting them both. The 2 men fled, and a getaway driver drove them to Guthrie Robert Packer Hospital in Stayre, Pennsylvania. One of the men shot, a 50-year-old, was treated at the hospital and then transported to Strong Memorial Hospital in Rochester. He was charged Monday with first-degree burglary. The other man, age 32, was treated at Robert Packer Hospital. He has also been charged with first-degree burglary. Both men are being held at the Thompson County Jail without bail, according to police. The 38-year-old female getaway driver was also arrested and charged with first-degree burglary. She is remanded to the Thompson County Jail on $15,000 bail or $30,000 bond, according to the police. This is a pretty straightforward story of another armed citizen saving himself by being armed and obviously proficient with his firearm. With 2 burglars inside, using deadly force was clearly reasonable. The third criminal outside is a reminder that there are often more opponents than you can see. Hopefully, local prosecutors in the New York State courts will see this as a reasonable self-defense and not bring criminal charges against this citizen. The likelihood of a civil lawsuit would then become almost a given. Advice here to anyone in a similar situation is to always have an attorney present before making statements. We're going to run into a few stories that's the prime thing in today's issue of Fired Up. This next one comes to us from WBTV Channel 3 News, reported July 27 in Indian Land, South Carolina. Deputies responded to a burglary call around 3:30 in the early morning at a home on Fox Ridge Lane. Officers said a 37-year-old man drove to the residence in Lancaster County, yes, uninvited, and that's where his ex-girlfriend was visiting. Deputies said the 37-year-old man from Matthews, North Carolina, was upset that the woman was there. The homeowner, a 40-year-old man, allowed this 37-year-old man to come inside to the downstairs kitchen. The homeowner went upstairs to talk with the woman, who was hiding in a walk-in closet in the master bedroom suite. She's apparently really frightened of this guy. Soon after, the 37-year-old ex-boyfriend made his way upstairs and confronted the homeowner and the woman at the closet door. A disturbance ensued that could mean a lot of things. That's what the report says. A disturbance ensued, and the homeowner fired a handgun at the 37-year-old, who was hit, and he died at the scene. The woman was taken to a medical facility to be treated for injuries and later released. A search warrant for the home and the deceased's automobile was obtained, and evidence was collected. There have not been any arrests in this case as of this report. Now, letting the 37-year-old into the residence was certainly questionable with our 2020 hindsight, knowing what was going to happen. It appears the resident was trying to act as a peacemaker and grossly underestimated the danger of his uninvited guest. The act of shooting the 37-year-old in self-defense and defense of the woman, once the event became violent, was clearly reasonable and clearly necessary. The evidence collected from the deceased car may prove valuable to assess his intent to harm the woman. There may be things in there that he showed planning, that he was coming there with the intent to harm her. I'm sure there's a lot more to this, but the shooting itself, after what turned out to be a poor decision to let the guy in the house, was certainly and clearly valid. We're going to break for just a minute from a word from some of our friends and associates. I'll be right back. This is a reminder to all our listeners. Keystone Corporation, it's a conservative organization that I'm on their board of directors, is having their annual dinner on Tuesday, October 6th, 2020. The featured speaker is Karl Rove. It is at the Venetian Hotel. For information, you can visit online to www.keystonenevada.com and get all the information. Tables are available for groups, and Karl Rove is an amazing commentator. You don't want to miss this. It is going to be the conservative event of the year. Attorney Donald J. Green, a common guest of mine on Fired Up. He can be reached at 702-409-8239. He specializes in gun case litigation. He is your man. Don Green, 702-409-8239. And Battlefield Vegas, my new kind of home for this show. They're on Circus Drive, directly behind the Circus Hotel and Casino. You can find them there with CCW classes and an amazing place for gun rentals, everything you could possibly imagine. Check out, if you're in town as a tourist, check out Battlefield Vegas.
KeystoneCorporation.com.
And as promised, I'm back again. This next story comes from WSVN Fox News 7, a reporter named Brittany McIntosh. What a cute name. Reported July 31st, 2020 in northwest Miami-Dade, Florida. Police were called to 5945 Northwest 19th Avenue in Brownsville just before 1 in the morning. Miami-Dade police spokeswoman Alvaro, here we go, Zabatella, I know I screwed that up, confirmed a man was allegedly trying to enter a woman's northwest Miami-Dade home through her window at an apartment complex near Northwest 59th Street and 19th Avenue. The woman inside the apartment shot the man. He was pronounced dead at the scene, and police have not identified him yet. Police put up crime scene tape for several hours, and they looked into the incident. Detectives are still working to determine whether the woman who pulled the trigger knew the man who tried to go through her window. If you have any information, you're requested to call Crime Stoppers at 305-471-TIPS, 305-471-8477. Comments on this, there's not a lot of detail here, but I cannot imagine the circumstances wherein an individual comes through a woman's window in the middle of the night. The shooting would not be reasonable. If they knew each other or not, had a relationship or not, were criminals or not, then could this possibly not, how could this possibly not be a valid shooting? A lot of these, when we get, it just happened and there's no information, but I just can't imagine this guy climbing in the window at early morning into this woman's house was not a valid shooting. In any case. This next story comes from WGRB CBS News 6. A reporter named Stephen Mager reports July 30th, 2020, in Troy, New York. An off-duty Troy police officer jumped into action Thursday night, attempting to stop a stabbing in progress. This is according to Troy PD's deputy chief named Dan D. Wolf. The officer was off-duty Thursday night at his home on 17th Street when he heard a domestic incident upstairs. He went to investigate and discovered a 26-year-old man in process of stabbing a 25-year-old woman. We can stop here and imagine what could be happening that was a justifiable stabbing. Anyway, so the officer repeatedly ordered the man to back off. He eventually fired his shotgun, which stopped the stabbing. It is unclear at this time if the shotgun was a personal or service weapon. Police say multiple people called 911 to report the stabbing. This is the deputy chief says this is a horrific incident for him to have to go through as well. This was from Deputy Chief Dan D. Wolf. Nobody wants to wake up in the morning in a case like this where he didn't even go to work. Work came to him. According to the police, those involved in the incident were taken to Albany Medical Center. The female victim is in critical condition. Chief Dan D. Wolf, Deputy Chief, I'm sorry, I promoted him every time I say his name. Deputy Chief Dan D. Wolf says even off the clock, the officers have a duty to act. Again, this is quoting him, a regular citizen can retreat, but an officer can't. An officer has to act. So if this is going to be in front of him, this is going on in front of him, he has to act. A neighbor is glad he did. He says he didn't even know an officer lived in this usually quiet neighborhood. He said, I'm pretty sure he didn't want to come in and handle a situation like that. I'm pretty sure he wanted to calm the situation, but fortunately, he was there. The district attorney's office and attorney general's office are on the scene. The investigation could be run by the AG's office. That appears more likely. The off-duty officer now will be put on desk duty, which is protocol until as the investigation unfolds. The names of those involved in the incident are not being released at this time. Request from the police department, if you or someone you know witnessed any part of this incident, please call the Rensselaer County District Attorney's Office. Their phone number anyway, if I don't say their name right, is 518-270-4040. 518-270-4040. Comments here, officers are in fact required to intervene when criminal acts take place in their presence. That intervention varies dramatically from department policy and state law where the incident happens. It can be often as little as calling 911 or in life and death situations using deadly force to stop whatever appears to be a violent act in progress. With all the defund and replace police stuff on social, and replace police with social workers crap, their reactions on and off duty are scrutinized by the left side press and the lawsuit lawyers, of course, after every incident. They're taking their life in their hands. Hopefully this officer will be fine. I cannot imagine a lawsuit over this, but you never know. We're going to break for a word from some of our friends and associates. We'll be right back. Freestyle Martial Arts, located at Jones and Russell here in Las Vegas. You can reach them at 702-551-9009. That's 702-551-9009. CCS Gunsmithing. Chris Eifelt, the man who does all the NRA help, he's at 2216 South Rainbow Boulevard near Sahara. He can be reached at 702-365-1732. Once again, 702-365-1732. Jerry Creed, a trust attorney. If you have a firearms trust or need one, this is your guy. You can reach Jerry at 702-806-7777. That is 702-806-7777. CCW Maggie is found all over the internet. You can reach her by phone at 702-375-5900. That's 702-375-5900. All sorts of firearms training, ladies only classes. She is the best of the best. Call CCW Maggie. This is a reminder to all our listeners. Keystone Corporation, it's a conservative organization that I'm on their board of directors, is having their annual dinner on Tuesday, October 6th, 2020. The featured speaker is Karl Rove. It is at the Venetian Hotel. For information, you can visit online to www.keystonenevada.com and get all the information. Tables are available for groups, and Karl Rove is an amazing commentator. You don't want to miss this. It is going to be the conservative event of the year. Okay, this next incident is from, the original report is from the Houston Chronicle, reported July 31 in St. Louis, Missouri. An 80-year-old woman was forced to drive to an ATM after being confronted by an armed suspect in a South City Chinooks parking lot. According to the police, the victim was getting into her car in the store's parking lot on Longsboro, when a woman pointed a gun at her and demanded money around 2:20 p.m. in the afternoon. The victim told the suspect she didn't have any money, but she's reportedly the woman forced her to drive to a nearby ATM at the Great Southern Bank. When the woman could not withdraw money from the ATM, the suspect had her drive to the 7100 block of Virginia, where the suspect got out with some of the victim's property. The victim was not injured during the incident. The investigation is ongoing. This is obviously not really a self-defense story, but it's the reason why you should buy your grandmother a gun, a taser, or at least some pepper spray. What is our world coming to when an 80-year-old woman is robbed at gunpoint in the middle of the afternoon? I am an equal rights guy. I will not point out that the armed robber was also female. You go, girl. In this case, you get to go to prison. Who robs 80-year-old? Anyway, that is obviously a federal kidnapping charge. There's lots of other things going on in that incident. This is sorry, it's not self-defense, but it just annoyed the hell out of me reading that story. Lots of incidents over the past 3 decades have been decided based on the Garner case. You hear that all the time on the TV news. A little information here as to what happened and why this Supreme Court decision reflects so often on current litigation in shooting incidents. I'm using lots of paraphrasing in this story to shorten it because there have been several books written on this. It's a really long case. It was argued October 30th, 1994 and decided March 27, 1985 with the U.S. Supreme Court. A Tennessee statute provides that if, after a police officer has given notice of intent to arrest a criminal suspect, the suspect flees or forcibly resists, the officer may use all necessary means to effect the arrest. Acting under that statute, a Memphis police officer shot and killed Garner after he was told to halt, as he fled over a fence in the middle of the night in the backyard of a home he was suspected of burglarizing. The officer used deadly force despite being reasonably sure, that's in quotes, the suspect was unarmed and thinking that he was 17 or 18 years old and of slight build. His father subsequently sued in federal district court seeking damages under 42 U.S.C. 1983, that all cops are aware of, for asserted violation of his son's constitutional rights. That's the federal statute that says police can't violate your rights. The district court held that the statute and the officer's action were constitutional. Ultimately, the United States Supreme Court got the case and ruled on it. They held the Tennessee statute is unconstitutional insofar as it authorizes the use of deadly force against, as in this case, an apparently unarmed, non-dangerous fleeing subject. Such force may not be used unless necessary to prevent the escape, and the officer had probable cause to believe the suspect poses a significant threat of death or physical injury to the officer or other people. Now, he was only in danger of escaping from a burglary, so in the case of Garner, they held the shooting was unconstitutional. Next week, I'm going to feature at the end of the show another giant case limiting law enforcement invention. It's called Graham versus Connor. And you always hear of the Graham case and this prior case, it will be it's an interesting comparison. In the second case in Graham, the officers were more clearly wrong when they started out. But these are the two cases, Garner and Graham, that are always cited for police misconduct, always under 42 U.S.C. 1983. This last story just came up, and I am the New York Attorneys General has sued the National Rifle Association just this week, seeking to put the organization out of business. The allegations are that high-ranking executives diverted millions of dollars for lavish personal trips, no-show contracts for associates, and other questionable expenditures. The Attorney General, Letitia, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, James, filed in state court in Manhattan after an 18-month investigation, highlighted misspending and self-dealing allegations that have rolled over in the NRA and its longtime leader, Wayne LaPierre, in recent years, from hair and makeup for his wife to a $17 million post-employment contract for himself. James argues the troubles started to come to light as the NRA's deficit piled up after a spate of mass shootings eroded support for the their pro-gun agenda. The organization went from nearly a $28 million surplus in 2015 to a $36 million deficit in 2018. Even the NRA's own bylaws and employee handbook were ignored, she said. James said in a statement announcing the lawsuit, "The NRA is fraught with fraud and abuse, which is why today we seek to dissolve the NRA, because no organization is above the law." Although it is headquartered, the NRA is headquartered in Virginia, the NRA was originally chartered as a nonprofit in New York in 1871 and continues to be incorporated in that state, which James is using as their hook because it's a New York corporation. James also named LaPierre and 3 other current and former executives as defendants. While the lawsuit accuses all 4 men of wrongdoing and seeks fines and remuneration, none of them have been charged with a crime. As of this report, the NRA has not responded. There may be some smoke there may not be, we don't know as yet, but this particular DA has been trying to shut down the NRA for some time. She is known to be a radical Democrat, anti-gun person. I don't know her personally, so I'm just stating from other comments that came out. We will see when the NRA responds as to what their belief is, whether all this was misspent. This goes way back to Aldi North and so forth and so on, and the problems they had when he was trying to, or did for a while, become president of the organization. Anyway, we'll have more on that next week, I'm sure, and more on the Graham case next week. You can check out my recent shows at firedupwithboberwin.com. It contains several dozen episodes. Please patronize our friends and associates. We'll be back next Thursday on my website, firedupwithboberwin.com, on the American Guns and Glory Network, numerous other websites, television, and radio stations. When watching any media, just click on subscribe and new shows will be sent to your phone or computer automatically. Please remember my logo merchandise, hats, shirts, and books are available at Battlefield Vegas, just behind Circus Circus on the Las Vegas Strip. If you are ever in Las Vegas, Battlefield Vegas is a must-see transaction. You can shoot a minigun or hundreds of other firearms and even drive an Abrams tank over a car, if you wish, at their outdoor facility. Transportation is provided for them. You can contact them at info@battlefieldvegas.com. Something you got to see when you come to Las Vegas. Thank you for watching and supporting Fired Up. I'll be back next week for another edition of Fired Up. Be safe.